It's week 13 in the NFL, and we're going to build cash lineups on the main slate for both DraftKings and FanDuel, and it's coming up next. Hello, everyone. I'm Eric Lee.
And I'm Michael Wiley, and we're the Fantasy Football Consultants. Eric, another week down, another kind of crazy week, both from a fantasy perspective and certainly from a NFL perspective. Well, Eric, I think we got to give congratulations to Keegan, Dan, and Bernard. Nice win there by Keegan. Had to get Allen in there with a great game, and a couple other guys that we talked about in there as well. But Kyren Williams, one that we didn't talk about, seemed to have an impact. But Eric, you got there in the top 10 even without Kyren Williams, so congratulations with that.
Thank you. I barely made the screen, so it's very nice of you not to cut it off. All right, let's talk about week 13. We're going to prepare a cash lineup on both FanDuel and DraftKings. And this week, there are 3 players who are core players, meaning they're in both lineups for FanDuel and DraftKings. And the number one guy is Tyreek Hill. He is a whopping $10,000 on FanDuel and $9,600 on DraftKings, but he is worth every penny. Look, he is the best wide receiver in the NFL this year, and it's not close. He leads every stat that's important for wide receivers on a per game basis. So I think, and what's on top of that, he's got the dream matchup of all dream matchups, facing a terrible secondary in the Washington Commanders. Michael, how do you make a horrible secondary even worse? Trade away 2 guys that at least put some pressure on the quarterback, so now it takes longer for the defensive line to get to the quarterback. Man, Tyreek Hill is just going to destroy this Washington Commanders secondary. I actually think the offense hopefully will keep this somewhat close, so they have to continue to pass. I really like Tyreek Hill this week.
Yeah, no, I got to get him in this lineup. I know he's so expensive, and I'm going to have to figure out a way to make up for that. Unfortunately for the Indianapolis Colts, Jonathan Taylor is going to have thumb surgery. He's going to be out for a couple of weeks. And because of that, guess who is available for a nice price? It's Zach Moss. He's $5,400 on FanDuel and $4,600 on DraftKings. Really a bargain. You want to see how he likes Tennessee? Their defense maybe has been a little bit better against the run this year, but guess what? They weren't when they played Indianapolis this year. If you look at what Zach Moss did when Jonathan Taylor was out against the Tennessee, he only scored 36.5 fantasy points. I guess that was on DraftKings when you got a little bit more for receptions, because he had 165 yards on the ground, got in the end zone a couple of times. Big fantasy day for him. Just a bargain because of the current situation. Got to get him in the lineup. To me, it's really a no-brainer. The Colts are using their run game. They've used Moss nicely when Taylor was out, and Taylor's out.
Classic free square running back. If this news had come out before the salaries were set, I mean, Moss would have been $2,000 more easy. All right, so the last core player is Rachaad White. He is $7,500 on FanDuel and $6,300 on DraftKings. I really like this guy. Over and over, he is getting a lot of touches, not only getting the lion's share of the carries and being the goal line back, but getting heavily involved in the passing game, which is so great on DraftKings and still valuable on FanDuel. But what's great about White this week is the matchup. It's not often that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going to be heavy favorites. They are at home, and they are favored by 6 points over the Carolina Panthers. So game script should be in his favor. So glad to get him at a pretty reasonable price here.
Yeah, and the Tampa Bay's been using him more and more, and he's really proven to be the replacement for Leonard Fournette. So like the play and like the price. So nice floor and some upside as well.
All right, so we spent some money with Hill. We got one little bargain there. We don't have a lot of money to build the rest of our lineup, but we've got some more bargains for you. We'll start with FanDuel. All right, here we are on FanDuel, and with White, Moss, and Hill, we have spent a little bit of money. We have a little over 6,000 per player to spend, and I'm going to spend it wisely with these next three picks. I think at the 2 wide receiver slots and the tight end slot, I've got 3 guys, 2 number 1 wide receivers, and the tight end I'm very excited about. Let's first start with Terry McLaurin at $6,700. Number 1 wide receiver in a very good matchup. I think they are going to be playing catch up against this Miami offense. And look, he's got an average of 9.5 targets over the last 6 weeks. The Miami, not because that they're a terrible defense, just because of game script, they're 24th against wide receivers because teams are fighting from behind. So I'm glad at this price to get McLaurin, and almost at an identical price, $100 more, $6,800, Marquise Hollywood Brown. You know what? As soon as Kyler Murray was coming back, I thought more than anyone on this team, Marquise Brown would be the beneficiary. He went invisible the first 2 games. I have no idea why, but he came back big time last week with 12 targets. He faces a Pittsburgh D that has not done great against wide receivers, 25th against wide receivers. So let's get Hollywood Brown in the lineup. And my favorite pick at tight end, let me just ask you guys a question before we show them. Before we show a guy that's $5,600, guess, out there at home, guess how many targets per game, let's say over the last 6 games, do you think David Njoku has gotten? Whatever you guessed too low. The answer is 9.3. Over 9 targets a game for the year. I'm not just cherry picking. For the year, among all tight ends, he's 4th in targets. And guess what? The 3 ahead of him, Hawkinson, Kelsey, and Evan Ingram, none of them are on the main slate. So you just go figure why he have 6 tight ends on the main slate that are more expensive than him. You might also ask, why did his targets go up just in the last 6 games? Well, gee, what happened 6 games ago? Deshaun Watson went down around that time. The backup quarterbacks, whether it's DTR or PJ Walker, they're not stretching the field. They're not throwing the ball deep. They're using the safety valve of David Njoku, not only between the 20s, but around the goal line. I love this pick at only $5,600.
Yeah, and Amari Cooper is questionable at this point, so I think that's a good pick. I was surprised to see that Pittsburgh was, as poor of a defense as they are. So, that makes me like that Hollywood Brown pick even more. And you're right. I think Terry McLaurin's going to be involved in a comeback effort. Not sure they will get far into that effort, but throwing the ball to McLaurin, I think, is going to be a big part of that. So glad we could get those 3 at those prices.
Yeah, the Rams are bad against tight ends. I should have mentioned 29th so far this year. You got to love all those greens that are against that position that we have in this lineup. Let's go at quarterback. Typically, you see that we try to get a mid-range quarterback, but we had the money to spend a little bit here, and let's get the rookie sensation, C.J. Stroud. Not just because he's just been unbelievable, but I like the game script. He's a home favorite, 3-point favorite. He is facing Denver, whose defense has gotten better, but still for the season is way below average. Very nice 25 implied total. He's had 3 straight weeks in which he's thrown for over 300 yards. Very impressive last week. You called it, Michael. And I said, they don't use Stroud in the running game as much as I would like them. And you said he can run if they just need to give him an opportunity. And he had the opportunity last week. Let's see if it carries over. CJ Stroud at $8,000 in the flex position, because I'm going to, spoiler alert, we're going to go real cheap on defense. Let's get Breece Hall at $6,700. So, if you're not in New York, you haven't been paid attention. There was a changing of the guard last week. It is now Tim Boyle's team and taking over for Zach Wilson at quarterback. But make no mistake, their running back is Breece Hall. Now, if you're just looking at this, you go, oh, what is he in a timeshare? He only got 7 carries last week, 10 carries the week before. No, he's not in a timeshare. It's because game script got completely away from them as they got blown out by both Miami and Buffalo. That's not going to happen this week. At least the Nines makers say it won't. They're only 2.5-point dogs at home against Atlanta. Look, last week he had 7 of the 8 running back carries against Buffalo. Even though there was people got carries in the fourth quarter, other people, he was still 10 of 16. And most notably, with the change in the guard to Tim Boyle, look how much Boyle utilized Breece Hall in the passing game. 9 targets. You gotta love that. So really happy to get Breece Hall in the lineup. And then finally, defense. Gee, which defense? Let's see all the choices that we have for defense. It's like being at a bar at 2 or 3 in the morning. The options are not very good. Let's sit this way. I'm not picking Washington. So therefore, it's by default the Arizona Cardinals. There's something to like about Arizona. They are better than average at going after the quarterback. 2.66 sacks, 15th in the NFL, and they're facing the 26th ranked overall offense. I'm not sold on this Pittsburgh offense and Kenny Pickett. So a 5.5-point spread. It's definitely a punt defense, but that's what we're going to go with.
Yeah, so I understand why you made that decision with what we had left. Really like the Breece Hall pick. I think that he really is the key to that team having a chance. And so I'd like to see him get even more involved. And C.J. Stroud going up against Denver, who has been a little bit leaky in the past game. So like the lineup, Eric, good job. I think it's going to be a winner.
I want to emphasize something, and it's true for DraftKings and FanDuel. The highlight of our lineups is Tyreek Hill. Now, he did not practice today on Wednesday because of an ankle injury. Now, I am hopeful, as Miami is, that he'll be fine by game day. But if any reason you doubt that, I'll tell you a tremendous pivot, same game, is Jalen Waddle at $7,800. If Tyreek Hill is out, or you believe that he's going to be strongly limited, got to get him out of the lineup and move over. Let's talk DraftKings.
All right, Eric, here we are on the DraftKings main slate. We've got not as much money to work with. We only have a little less than $5,000 per player after starting with White, Moss, and Hill. I want to go with a guy who, heated up last week, as I kind of expected he would. Kind of surprised it took as long to do so. But he's a pretty reasonable priced guy going up against. Go down to $6,200 if you would. He's going up against the Philadelphia Eagles, who you've had to attack in the air because they're so tough against the run. Part of the reason they are one of the worst performing fantasy defenses against the pass is because they're usually ahead. This game could be closer, and I do think that the Niners will use the run game some, but I think that Deebo Samuel is primed to have a big impact. Look what he did this last week against Seattle, your Seahawks. He had 9 targets for 7 receptions for 79 yards. And then got in the end zone on the ground, which he does. He's one of the best receivers for getting involved in the run game because he's basically got running back legs. I was thinking to go another direction when we were talking about our combined picks, but I've been moved to look at Terry McLaurin now. So here on DraftKings, he's 5,500. So really well priced going up against Miami. We've already talked about them, so they're going to be in comeback mode. And then at the tight end spot, going all the way down to $3,200. Cade Otton, he's been getting the ball around the end zone. He got 2 touchdowns in that Houston game. He's consistently getting 4 or 5 targets. So the floor is nice. The upside maybe not quite as high as some of the other guys. Would be nice if we could have gotten Njoku in the lineup here as well, but just didn't have the dollars.
No, I think we're seeing the effect of Tyreek Hill, but we're still getting guys that I think will give you a solid floor. I like in the last game that they're using Samuel on the ground again. And I think they're going to have to be creative against this Philadelphia rush defense. And I think using him high value, maybe even around the end zone, running the ball, I think could be really effective.
Very good. Well, so at the quarterback position, I have my, given the remaining dollars that we have there, we got to live with 14,600 remaining. I have my eyes on a guy who has really just started to heat up, led his team to really, they're the hottest team other than the Eagles. We talked a little bit about him on our other show, Survivor. And that is Russell Wilson. He's priced at $5,700. And starting to use his legs a little bit. 4 out of the last 5 weeks, he's really used his legs. He even got in the end zone this last week. They're on the outside looking in for the playoffs, but if you look at some of the other teams' playoff opportunities, it looks like the Broncos have a real good chance, and this is an important game for them to win. And they're not going to be able to do that without Russell Wilson. Not only throwing the ball, but using his legs a little bit. So you may not get the yardage totals with him from a passing perspective as others, but I think he represents a very nice floor because of how integral he is to that offense. At the flex position, just look at the targets he gets. It's Ramondre Stevenson at 6,000. He consistently gets 4 or 5 passing targets, and he's getting the bulk of the carries. Last couple of weeks, 20 plus carries, got in the end zone, even in that ugly Giants game where they only scored a single touchdown. He's not going to get in the end zone multiple times because New England won't get in the end zone multiple times. But he's gonna get the bulk of the touches for that team. Maybe as many touches as any other running back. So kind of surprised to see him at $6,000, especially since he's becoming a little bit more of the pass focal point like he was in prior seasons. But we just talked about the Denver defense. They have really looked solid. I know Houston has been a little bit better not turning the ball over than everyone thought the rookie would be. But I think this game is going to be tight, and I think Denver, who is one of the best teams at forcing turnovers, is going to force the hand there. And so of those that are available to us, that's the one I like. Leaves us a couple $100, which we could use elsewhere. I know you have some thoughts about these 3 picks. Go ahead, Eric. Give me your thoughts.
Yeah. So I love the Stevenson pick. I think his value at $6,000 is great. I'm going to just offer everyone a potential pivot. I'm going to go down from the Denver defense to the Carolina Panthers. I actually like Tampa Bay to win this game, but Baker Mayfield and company will make mistakes, no question about that. So for a punt defense, not too bad. And that allows us just enough money at quarterback to go from Russell Wilson to Brock Purdy. So I loved when you were talking about my man Russell Wilson from the Seattle days. Yeah, he's running the amount like he did in the Seattle games, just not for the yardage because he's old. I think it was 11 for 34. You won't quite get that out of Purdy. You'll get a better average, but he won't run as much. But you're likely to get better passing yardage and probably more touchdowns, especially in this matchup, which you already referred to when talking about Deebo Samuel. Philadelphia is much tougher on the run. And when you have a talent like Christian McCaffrey, you're going to use him, but they may be using him as a pass catcher more this week as opposed to a runner. And that's great for Brock Purdy. Little screen passes and watches McCaffrey run for 20, 30, and 40 yards at a time. is great in accumulating Brock Purdy's yardage, more likely that he'll find the end zone. His weapons between McCaffrey and Kittle and Ayuk and Deebo Samuel is some of the best weapons in the NFL. So 6,100, I think, is a good price. I think, and so do the lines makers, I think this is going to be a high-scoring game, despite that they have two good defenses. So I just want to emphasize, in case people missed it from the FanDuel section, got to watch Tyreek Hill's health. I like the pivot to Waddle, but if you're assuming Hill is out, we don't talk too much about GPP, but I just want to say that to the extent we can still take advantage if Noah Brown is not available. It seems like it's a clear pass funnel with CJ Stroud going to Tank Dell and Nico Collins. And I think this Denver-Houston game could be a shootout. It's not the highest scoring game, but I like doing that. Get a little lower ownership, hopefully. So if Noah Brown's out, don't mind that as a stack. And you can bring it back. The wide receivers on Denver are very reasonably priced. On DraftKings, Cortland Sutton is only $5,400. Jerry Jeudy's only $4,700. So it's a stack that you can make and have some money to spend. If you haven't yet, smash the like button, share your thoughts in the comment section, and hit that red subscriber button. Until next week, take care, everybody.
We'll put 2 videos on the screen that we think you'll enjoy.